All right, so we got the frame for the 40 flathead on here on the table, and we're getting ready to put some stuff on it. So anyway, I'm gonna start off with putting a fender on the rear here and making it fit. A couple weeks ago, I was at the Davenport, Iowa antique swap meet and saw some original fenders and stuff, and some tanks and front fender also, because I kind of need a little bit of both, because the rear fender was all bobbed and stuff, and I don't have a front fender, and the tanks were all, I didn't have any tanks. So anyways, so I'm ended up going with some aftermarket stuff, because that stuff there was priced pretty good. They wanted like $1,200 to $1,400 for original rear fender. It was all bent up and dented and dinged and rusty and some paint on it. But so anyway, I'm going to be working on putting a V-twin fender on it, a replica rear fender. It looks identical to some of them original fenders from what I can tell in the pictures I took and stuff and what I've been seeing. So we're going to find out how well it fits on here, because unfortunately I got to put some replica stuff on and replacement fenders. It's kind of hard to get 100% original stuff. But anyway, especially if you want it in good shape, because a lot of that stuff is all rough over the years and gets all messed up. So anyway, that's kind of the opening here. So stay tuned as we start working on putting this rear fender on here. Well, here's the V-twin replica rear fender, 1936 to 1946 style rear hinged fender. That part number is 50-0156, and we're going to find out how well I can get it to fit on my frame over here. Hope I don't have to modify it a bunch of times, but anyway, like I was saying a little bit ago, the original fenders that I was seeing, which I can't even tell if they were replicas or not, being passed off as originals, because it looked identical under here. So on this V-twin fender, it's got the channel for your taillight wire to go in. You got to drill your own taillight in here, and which they leave that all blanked off, which we'll be doing later. The rear, there's a brace right here, spot welded into this. It's for the rear stand catch. And then we have the butterfly style hinge, and then we have more conduit here for the wire to go up through again. The fenders I saw at the Davenport swap meet that were claiming to be originals had this welded on it as well, which I don't know if this is real or not, because according to the parts print, there's supposed to be a nut that holds the rear seat yoke down, and this is clearly a threaded brace in here. So that was fishy too. So I don't know, I kind of passed, or either that or this is how accurate this one is. Because I don't know that for sure on this one, because my bobbed one's a little bit different, and I ended up giving that away to a friend that wanted to use it, or selling it, so it wasn't a big deal for me. There's reinforcement plates back here. This is where the U-bolt, or the actual U-clamp that gets bolted to the rear bar that goes across the fender, comes through here, support as a reinforced plate here. And then the bottom of the oil tank comes in through here to this reinforcement plate. And then there's a bottom bolt that comes through the fender here. And then there's an access panel that comes down through here. And that all fits. So this thing is pretty much ready out of the box to go on your frame and be fitted. Of course, there's going to be, it says clearly in the description that it may require tweaking and adjusting and a timely process getting it to fit. So we're going to try to do that. But so anyways, get it to fit. And then back here, carriage bolts hold this fender hinged part together. These aren't correct, so we will not be using those. But this is how it kind of looks. So stay tuned. So we're going to start messing around with this fender here. So starting off here, I just want to say something. I do not promote or de-promote or non-promote stuff. This is going to be just a personal experience with these V-twin parts. I'm not trying to say don't buy it. I'm not trying to say buy it. Just saying that offhand because I found some stuff here I need to fix on it that isn't quite right, but it is what it is. So stay tuned. Alright, so first off here on this fender, these are too far in. They need to be closer here on both sides. This mounts on the outside of the frame, and that distance is 9 3/4, and this is sitting at 6 1/4 right now. So this is all got to get spread out. So we're gonna start there, I believe, here with this. So anyway, stay tuned here. Alright, so we got the fender on here. We've been tweaking around with it for a while now, and we got it pretty much lined up here in some spots, but other spots don't line up. Yeah, so anyway, even if I would have bought a fender from the swap meet, the original one, it probably wouldn't have fit either anyway, because all bikes and all fenders and all that stuff are fit differently for everything anyway. But using this V-twin fender, we've come across a few problems here. We got a couple rivets that are loose. We need to tighten up, and anyway, otherwise it's kind of lining up okay, but we got problems like with this back hinge part right here, because if we want this line right here where the hinge goes together to be, you know, uniform like it's supposed to be on both sides, we have to like loosen it up. And here's one of the loose rivets I was talking about. I'll tighten that up, of course, but just see back here, we're gonna have to like modify this. But anyway, we're kind of at a standstill because to make this fender really fit really well, like it's supposed to, we probably need to put the front end on, the front fender on, put the transmission in, so we can get chain clearance here. And yeah, because I mean everything else might be lining up perfect because of the frame and everything we've done elsewhere, but this fender is new to this frame, so it's not right. So we're gonna try to make it right. So stay tuned here and we'll get this thing figured out here. So we're getting ready to put the transmission in here. We had to put this adjustment plate in here, and it's kind of hard to find the information on how this all goes together, but this is I believe this is the correct way that this goes on. The plate goes on the bottom, otherwise if it was on top it wouldn't line up with the bolt. And the bolts and some of the pictures and archive pictures I have of other bikes and other people's original bikes, looks like the nut was on the top and the bolt came in through the bottom. Unfortunately, to get that to happen, you have to have the plate off to do it, because you can't squeeze it in there through this lower fender mounting plate here. So earlier I had put this on first and realized when we went to go put this on that I needed to put this on first. So live and learn as you go along on this stuff. Other thing was the crossover shaft here for the rear brake. We installed this, just put it in, and we put the Zerk in, and it gets kind of tight over here. The transmission sitting here, when you have to hook all this stuff up. So I'll probably be putting that on here next before we put the transmission in totally. And then we'll be ready to go forward on this. So stay tuned here. Alright, so here's the primary side rear brake lever and the left side. And we got to bend the longer tabs around the corner here onto this piece that locks it in place. And then we'll tighten down the nut. And then when we find a flat, we'll bend one of these onto the flat. So this gets really, it's really tight through here. So that's why we got to do this before the transmission gets put in. It'll be easier this way anyway. Now for the other side, this side, it's kind of the same concept, but it gets really narrower through here. So we're able to we got to lock this into this groove like this too as well. Keeps it from turning. And then when we tighten it down, we bend one of these over too. So this is kind of how it goes together. So stay tuned here. Well, there we go. We got the flat. We got this tightened up. We got the flat locking the nut, and then we have these two flats down here bent over, locking it to the lever. And for the other side, we did the same thing. We got the nut lock tight, and we got this nut locked up here, and then this one's wrapped around on that side, and then on the other side as well. So there we go. Now I believe we're ready to put the transmission in, but we'll see as we get going here. Alright, so with moving forward on trying to get this rear fender to fit, we're ready to put the transmission in, because we need to kind of do that next before we put the battery tray in, where the oil tank mounts to, because it all hooks and sandwiches to the rear fender as well through here when it comes back, which we saw earlier. And other thing we can do while we're messing around up here is put the engine crankcase guard in. There's on this crankcase guard, they're originally black by the Palmer book and a lot of the archived photos. Anyways, it's got a recessed area here, because underneath here, where the seat post comes through, there is a stud that comes through, and the nut and all that stuff, and it clears that. A lot of the bikes I've seen, it's all on the bottom. They don't fit inside here without a bunch of grinding and stuff, and it doesn't make sense because it doesn't fit in there anyway. And so these other bikes that I've got reference photos of and stuff all show the bolts coming in from the bottom like this, and then a nut in here. And the parts print here on this parts book shows that as well. Bolt coming in from the bottom, a lock washer, and a nut. So anyway, that's how we're going to put it. We're going to put it just like the book says. So in the meantime, I'm going to put a generic bolt in the front here, holding it to here, because what happens is when we put the engine in, the motor mounting hardware actually comes through here and sandwiches the crankcase guard together here with the bolt and the nut and all that stuff. But in the meantime, we're going to hold it so we can put these in, and then we'll take this out when we go to put the engine in, of course. The original hardware was Parkerized, so we're going to be using the same stuff. Machined head with a machined recessed area here for like a built-in washer. We've talked about that kind of stuff before with Harley making their own components back in the day. They machined their stuff like this. Same with like this hex nut. And then just Parkerized lock washer. I categorized this stuff at the beginning when I was rounding up all the parts, making sure I put the right stuff, the sizes and stuff, and then part numbers, so I can reference them again later in the parts book over there. So let's stay tuned here while I set this up there and we put the hardware in. There we go. We got the engine crankcase guard in here. I got a couple bolts here in the front holding it so it has clearance. When we go to slide the motor in, we can easily put the motor mounting bolts in. Kind of modified it a little bit here in the back from when from what the print shows in the parts book, but filled the gap with a couple extra Parkerized washers and tightened it down. So it turned out pretty good. Yeah, anyway, happy with it. And then I put a flat washer on the backside too, because this bolt was long enough to where I had all this extra room. So otherwise, anyway, it's pretty close to the way it was, but it's a little bit off. But got to modify a little bit, you know, here and there to make things better or whatever, fit better. So anyway, so stay tuned here. Well, after getting the engine crankcase guard in and some of the transmission stuff and brake stuff all hooked up, we're kind of at a standstill right now. This next step we're going to be doing is putting the transmission in. But it's going to get real heavy real fast when we start putting these big components in, like the engine, transmission. Anyway, so we're kind of like going to end this segment here at this moment, and we'll catch back up again later. But kind of need to clear up a lift first before we get carried away with putting too much on here, because it's going to be, like I said, real heavy and kind of, yeah. Anyway, so stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed all this with trying to get this rear fender mounted on here. Of course, we're not done yet, so we'll come back in another segment later, like I said. So anyway, see you again soon.